All right, I am back, and let's talk a little bit more about the Cherokee and learn more about what they tried to do to impress the United States enough to allow them to stay in their home. The first thing that you should know is that the Cherokee chose to assimilate, which means that their goal to try to stay on their home was to adopt Western culture, American culture, as best that they could. Now, this was a massive decision for them because it meant abandoning, to a certain extent, their culture, their way of life, even their religion in some aspects. And not everyone on the tribe was on board with doing this. There was a lot of internal unrest and upsetment over the idea that basically the Cherokee were going to abandon everything that they knew to try and impress the Americans enough to stay where they lived. We'll talk more about that in a second, but what you should know is some of the biggest things is a Cherokee named Sequoia developed a Cherokee alphabet. The Cherokee language was spoken only, so it was not written at all, which means that there was no alphabetic figures that you could write down like A, B, C, D, E, F that would help you to read it. There was no way to read it. Well, Sequoia fixed that. He decided to turn Cherokee into an alphabet so that you could write it. It took a whopping 62 letters to create the Cherokee language in written format. Just to compare, obviously we have 26 letters. But to go even deeper, Sequoia developed a Cherokee alphabet and then published a newspaper that was printed on one side in English and on the other side in Cherokee. They had a bilingual newspaper that was distributed around their nation so that people could read what was going on. A very Western practice. Now, the Cherokee Nation in general was an organization of the Cherokee just like the U.S. with their own legal system, constitution, and court system. Isn't that crazy? They mimicked the style of government that the United States had created back in the late 1700s to try and adapt even further to the kind of political culture that the West believes in. Now, that seems very impressive, right? To really make a case, look down at the bottom of the screen. Now, at the bottom of the screen, you are going to see the chief of the Cherokee people. His name was John Ross. Chief John Ross. Probably not his original name that was given to him. Again, this just shows you the level of assimilation that they were trying. Now I'm going to compare him to another picture. This is our 17th president. His name is Andrew Johnson. Here's John Ross. Here's Andrew Johnson. Look at the parallels. Look at how far Chief John Ross has gone to attempt to change everything about the way that he is and his people are to try and adapt to American culture. Would you say they accomplished it? I would. But here's the problem. In 1828, the Cherokee, who happened to live in the northern part of Georgia, find out that gold was discovered in their territory on Cherokee lands. And basically, Georgia began making laws forcing them to leave, despite the Cherokees conforming and following what the United States asked them to do to stay in their home. Now, you obviously know that if our federal government has given permission for the Cherokee to stay somewhere, and a state government says no, who's more powerful, federal or state? Federal, right? So technically, Georgia should not have the right to do this. However, Jackson supports Georgia and their want for the gold on Cherokee land. Jackson did not care about the promises that were made to the Cherokee. In 1830, he passed a law, the Indian Removal Act, and it ended the ability for Native Americans to live on their land regardless of previous deals. This is an absolute hypocritical, backstabbing law. It betrayed a deal that we had made with the Cherokee. The Cherokee bent over backwards, abandoned their own culture, abandoned their way of life to try and stay on their home, and it meant nothing to Jackson because 1830 comes around, he passes a law and says, yeah, that previous deal, forget it, get off the land. Now, the Cherokee were told they had to move to Indian Territory, which is now modern-day Kansas and Nebraska. It's about 800 miles away from where their current home is in Georgia. However, I will tell you, the Cherokee are not going to give up without a fight. Not a fight physically, but they're going to fight a different way, legally. All right, let's take a look at our discussion question. Discussion question 2 says, look at Cherokee Chief John Ross. How can you tell the Cherokee chose to assimilate by the way that he looks? We had talked about this previously. Let me know in the chat right now. Now let's look at question number 3. What does the Indian Removal Act expose about what America truly cares about? Do they care about laws, do you think? Do we care about honoring the laws that we made with people? Do we care about deals? Honoring the deals that we make with people that are not a part of our country? Or do we care most about that green paper or that golden coin, right? Money. Let me know what you think.